with evaluation, I think that it's also a priority because if we, especially after the pandemic and the consequence of the closure of the schools, we need to know where we are in terms of knowledge and learning outcomes, and where do we want to go from here, and be always comparing ourselves with ourselves. And in that sense, we are launching this year a yearly program of evaluation in 3rd grade, 6th grade, and 9th grade. And the projects that are being recollected here in the paper are the first point of analysis of where are we in terms of knowledge and outcomes of learning, fundamental learnings. And of course, that will be like the stone to improve the quality of education. And the suggestion that they gave us, I think in each one of them, some of them, I think that the challenge will be how to increase the systematization of best practice all around the world, and including the best practice that the Mexican best practice that we can compare with what they are offering. But this is a it's an excellent way to start. The emotional learning or the socio-emotional learning is also a priority after the closure of the schools and the pandemic. Is something that is not just for the moment of opening the school. When we enter, just 3% of the schools were open. In December, we have 95%. At this moment, we have like 75% open, but the attendance of the students is very low because we open as a policy that the parents have the decision to send their kids to school if they feel that the schools are the best place to stay. Before I arrived to this conference, we have just launched an initiative of Nuevo León with Texas, and more than 300 children were taken the bus to drive to the frontier and take the shot for the vaccination of kids from 5 years to 12 years. This is the first state who started the vaccination for kids. That, together with what just finished the Saturday, that was the vaccination of all the reinforcements for vaccination of both for the vaccination for teachers, will help us to move again to the open schools. So all this explanation is because I think this wonderful paper also need to take into account 2 different dimensions. The dynamic dimension that take into account, as Patricia was saying, the COVID, what is going on with the COVID from August that we start working together to now. How the Omicron changed the perspective and how the political will need to take into account what is going on in the context of the country and how education can change in some ways the orientation of the priorities to respond to this political but especially health crisis that had repercussion on the schools. The second is because for the name and I think that the UNESCO paper gives us the possibility of talking about the social contract. And I think that this is something that we need also to include in this paper. How working together with civil society, with the different partners that are helping us in this, in these 3 different priorities, are also helping us to construct the social contract, to really open the priorities for the discussion of civil society and also to the whole citizen of Nuevo León, and say, we have these priorities, how we can build them together as a social contract. And I think this is something that is not accomplished just with the political paper that policy paper that is very important to have, but with different discussion at the different levels to really construct why it's so important to invest in early childhood, why the social emotional dimension as we enter into the schools with this lemma. We need to transit into from the pedagogy of fear to the pedagogy of hope, taking, of course, Freire as a point of departure with the pedagogy of hope, but putting in the center at the beginning the pedagogy of emergency, because we need to talk about what is going on with the health of the student, with the health of the teachers, and with the health of society. But just as a way to have this transit from fear to hope. And I think this kind of political construction is the one that we need to do with society, with a very strong policy paper, but also with dialogue with different actors. This will be my general comments. Yeah.
Thank you so much for those wonderful comments, and especially for the idea of embracing this paper as an input into the kind of inclusive, democratic, and participatory dialogue that the Commission of Education of UNESCO envisions as necessary to construct that. We are going to be following up with great interest. It would be wonderful to see Nuevo León become a leader globally in how to make this social dialogue actually produce a new contract. Let me turn it over to a team because we only have 1 minute to conclude. And I know there are some questions in the Q&A. I will ask you to address them. But if one of you could just talk for a minute and respond to the feedback that both Secretary Morales and Patricia Vázquez gave you, that would be great.
Hi. Sure, I would be happy to. I'm not sure, Ryan, were you going to, or someone else? Sorry, I couldn't see hands. Okay. First of all, I just wanted to thank Secretary Patricia Vázquez and Secretary Morales for all their feedback, for all the support that we have received from the state of Nuevo León, from civil society, from a variety of different actors and stakeholders, really in basically helping us formulate this and making, basically helping us try to come up with the best policy recommendations possible in support of the state. We really appreciate the feedback. I think that the point that both Secretary Vázquez made and Secretary Morales made regarding the lessons learned and the best practices, both in terms of looking at the evidence worldwide, as well as the homegrown evidence for Mexico. And I would say not just, in some, states, but I think in the state of Nuevo León as well, where there has been so much really, and civil society has done, I think, is a very key actor in the state, as we know, and it has also done so much to contribute to these homegrown solutions. So I think those are, we will certainly take that to heart. The other is the policy paper. And I think turning this into something that is very operational for the state is certainly our goal. I think we are all committed to that. And just to say that we really look forward to working continuing to work with the secretary and to continuing to channel. And I think this was a really good point, the UNESCO Futures of Education report. And there were many points still there that I think, and I think for Professor Reimers also pointed this out to us in our feedback, that we could have also maybe taken on two more and channeled to some extent through it. And I think Secretary Morales, you've certainly pointed that out as well in terms of the conscientization, the socialization, and I think the the pedagogy of hope. And so we will certainly look forward to doing that and to working together with the state to continue furthering these recommendations and to making them operational in line with as well the UNESCO, the principles of the UNESCO Futures of Education report. Thank you. And I'll hand it over to my colleagues in case they or anyone else would like to say anything.
I just wanted to say that I'm very happy to have here with us Ryan, and of course, having the possibility later on to have some other members of the team here in Nuevo León and face the reality as well as document what is going on and produce the policy paper. So I'm very happy with this opportunity for both of us.
Thank you so much, Sofia Leticia. So we are now going to transition from Nuevo León to Jalisco. And I'm delighted that we are going to have another Secretary of Education, Juan Carlos Flores Miramontes, who worked very closely, he and his team, with the team of students that wrote this paper. And they were very lucky that he was able to visit Harvard last semester and spend some time with them. So I'm now going to turn it over to the last paper of the morning. We will continue tomorrow. They're going to present, and then we're going to hear from Secretary Juan Carlos Flores, I hope.
Thank you, Professor Reimers, for this wonderful opportunity to present our findings to the education community. Hello, everyone. We are Team Jalisco, Mexico. Thank you for being here, and special thank you to the Secretary of Education for Jalisco, Juan Carlos Flores, for joining us. Next slide, please. Recrea is a state project that believes education is a key lever for preparing responsible citizens called Recrea Citizens. Recrea focuses on increasing school capacity, empowering teachers, students, principals, and families to collectively change the education system for communities within and around schools to become autonomous learning organizations. Next slide, please. The purpose of our paper was to analyze how Jalisco's Recrea aligns with the key ideas presented in UNESCO's report on the vision for the future of education, and to offer recommendations on how to move Jalisco's education system closer to that vision. The analysis and recommendations made in the paper are based on primary qualitative and quantitative data collected via interviews and an online survey, data and reports provided by the Jalisco's Secretariat of Education, SEF for short, as well as comparative evidence to support our recommendations. Next slide, please. We found that Recrea's foundation is aligned to UNESCO's vision on the role of education in rebuilding communities in a sustainable world. The key alignments include, firstly, Citizen Recrea emphasizes the interconnectedness between schools and communities and promotes students' harmony and collaboration in line with UNESCO's pedagogy of cooperation and solidarity. Secondly, the CAVs, which are the learning communities for and through life, promote learning through a continuous process of reflective dialogue and creation of a shared vision for change among education stakeholders. And finally, for lifelong learning, Recrea also promotes learning experiences for parents and community members through digital content and cards. While many aspects of Recrea are coherent with the vision of UNESCO report, we identified three main areas of opportunity to make the existing alignment stronger with the UNESCO's vision, which are expanding cards, improving the value of teaching profession and structured professional development for teachers, and promoting effective inclusive education. Next slide, please.
The next session covers our recommendations to address those areas of opportunities. We have identified wide support for CAVs across different levels of the educational system, and they are also strongly aligned with the UNESCO report's vision. However, the latest numbers are that 32% of educational institutions in Jalisco are operating as CAVs. To be able to fully benefit from the structure of CAVs, it is imperative to increase the number of educational institutions that operate as such. This is easier said than done. Because of the very nature of autonomy of those learning communities, expansion shall not be imposed upon them. They must independently adopt the model into their operation. Hence, our first recommendation is to stimulate word-of-mouth advertising through events, reports, testimonials, and CAVs observations. The SEC must create opportunities to share the outcomes of the established CAVs, as well as offer support for the institutions that express the interest of becoming a CAV, both in terms of material resources and capacity building. The second recommendation is to increase collaboration between educational institutions, which could also help in disseminating the benefits of operating as CAVs. SEC should actively promote regional meetings in which participants of institutions that operate as CAVs, as well as of institutions that do not yet operate as CAVs, have a chance of talking and exchanging practices and learnings. This process would eventually culminate in the establishment of a regional CAV, a body that was foreseen in the original design of Recrea, but that has not yet been implemented. Finally, we recommend the creation of a digital space for knowledge exchange to enable close collaboration between educational institutions that are not closely located. Jalisco already has the Recrea digital platform, which offers content for all educational stakeholders. Inspired by the French platform Respire, our recommendation is to embed within Recrea Digital a forum or a space in which educational professionals can collaborate with each other, ask questions, and exchange experiences online. To guarantee teacher engagement with this platform, it will be important to create structured incentives and provide adequate resources. These topics will be covered by Cuauhtemoc in the next recommendation. Next slide, please.
Recrea has an opportunity in terms, an area of opportunity in terms of the coordination of efforts for the professional development of teachers and the value of the teaching profession. Based on UNESCO's vision of the transformative work of teachers, and in order to strengthen the ongoing efforts of Recrea for the development of education professionals, we suggest 3 specific actions to fulfill this vision. First, we recommend attracting high school students into the teaching profession through internship programs. Currently, high school students are required to complete certain hours of social service in order to graduate. These hours could be used for short-term internships for in-school or after-school activities in public institutions. Similar internship programs have been implemented in Singapore, where the evidence indicates that the internships nurture interest in the teaching profession among high school students. Second, we recommend increasing professional development relevance and structure through CAPS with a 5-step strategy. The strategy consists of 1, mapping the needs that might not be visible by the school community through the application of a survey to different stakeholders. 2, sharing with the CAPS the survey results disaggregated by region, along with discussion guidelines that allow them to reflect on their practices and context. 3, sharing the CAPS analysis with SEX teacher department. 4, based on the analysis, coordinating efforts from different offices can arise, with programs that build on each other to offer increasing levels of depth. And 5, assessing the impact of the professional development on student outcomes through a new round of needs assessment. Lastly, our 3rd recommendation is to recognize teachers as knowledge producers. Recrea has ongoing efforts of sharing teacher experiences through conferences like Recrea Academy and teacher competitions like Recrea y Comparte. We recommend further creating system of incentives to register and share their experiences and learnings either with the regional CAPS or via the platform Recrea Digital. We suggest that the format for registering and submitting such practices to be simple and not time-consuming, given the heavy workload of teachers. These 3 recommendations regarding teacher preparedness and teacher valorization aim to professionalize and motivate the workforce and support them in reflecting and promoting solutions to their particular challenges. This ultimately will contribute to improving student learning. Next slide, please.
Finally, we want to discuss about inclusive education. The UNESCO report states that inclusion is among the most crucial of all human rights. Inclusion is one of the principles of Recrea, but it remains to be one of the biggest challenges, especially regarding students with special needs. Presently, only a small percentage of the schools have specialized professionals and programs, and almost half of the teachers and principals that we surveyed responded that they do not have enough training and resources to support these students. Align what is presented in the report and experiences in other countries, we propose 2 major initiatives that build over the recommendations that Cuauhtemoc and Natalia presented. The first one is building capacity for inclusion. And here again, we propose to revise existing professional development and teacher initial education to not only assure that is sufficient and relevant, but to incorporate an inclusive perspective in all of the courses and workshops. Our second recommendation is to use the CAVs as a space to collaborate and design strategic responses and interventions to leverage inclusion in all the different levels of the system. At a student level, we suggest a coordinated work between teachers and families to co-design interventions and monitor progress along the year. At a classroom and school level, we believe that the monthly technical council gives out an opportunity for professionals working in the same grade and to the whole school community to talk and discuss their problems, challenges, share experiences, and design plans of improvement for inclusion. And finally, at a system level, we want to reinforce the opportunity of implementing regional caps as a way to leverage the capacity that already exists in the system, given the opportunity of schools to learn from each other and schools that have a special needs program to transfer that capacity to others that do not. Recrea's vision is aligned to UNESCO's Futures of Education report in almost all of its dimensions. We hope that our recommendations support these ongoing efforts and provide every student of Jalisco the education that they deserve. Next slide, please. Thank you very much for your attention. We look forward to all of your questions and comments. And here is our emails if you want to reach out.
Thank you very much. And now I invite the Secretary of Education of Jalisco, Juan Carlos Flores Miramontes, thanking him for his very generous partnership with this group of students. He opened the doors of the Secretary so that they could work hand in hand. And I know that the state under his administration is also planning to use UNESCO's reports on the futures of education to invite the kind of inclusive, democratic, and participatory dialogue that the Commission envisions. And I very much hope that they will use this paper and the result of the work of these students as part of that process. So, Mr. Secretary, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Dr. Reimers. Thank you to all of you for your dedication in this research. We really appreciate it. For us, it's very important to know if Recrea's vision are aligned with the UNESCO's Future of the Education report. So that's why we are listening with a lot of attention. A lot of our colleagues are paying attention about every one of the suggestions. We see there are opportunities for stretching Recrea, existing conceptual alignment in our vision. We're ready to make that ideas, plans, and actions to improve our educational system. Thank you very much, Kana, Cuauhtemoc, Natalia, Paola. It has been a very interesting journey for us, not only hearing you in this brief report that you're giving us, but also just from the beginning. In the first recommendation, strengthening our CAPS through organic expansion, we're gonna do a lot of research on this topic. We're convinced that our 13,000 schools will benefit from this plan. So we're gonna take this idea that you were mentioning about giving our teachers space, a digital space for synthesizing to the knowledge to make it easier for everyone to see good practice. And also the second suggestion about our teacher professional development was for us very interesting. We're gonna work very hard in this perspective for students in high school. We would like to get in our 11 normales. There are our higher education schools for teachers, the best kids and girls out there in our high schools. That's a great idea. We're going to work on that. And also we're going to follow the 5 steps of that you were suggesting about how can we improve our professional development program for our teachers through CAPS. We recognize that teachers are well prepared in Jalisco, but as always, we can do more. And the third suggestion about supporting students with special needs, well, we definitely agree on that. I'm sorry, I think they are telling me that there's something wrong with my camera.
Yeah, we could see a nice picture, but we can hear you very well, so no problem. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, thank you. I'm sorry. Oh, I think. Okay, well, okay, so well, I would like to tell you that we are engaged on every part of the paper. We would like to follow a path of collaboration with you. We are all very interesting, and you are invited to come to Jalisco and help us to achieve all these new goals that we're going to have in the near future. And on behalf of the entire educational community in Jalisco, we thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretary Flores. That was just wonderful. I'm inviting those of you in the audience to post your questions using the Q&A. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to the members of this team to respond to the feedback they have received from the Secretary and to address some of the questions that are posted on the Q&A.
Thank you so much, Secretary Juan Carlos, for your inputs. And we are really proud that we were able to offer recommendations that made sense and that were feasible for the context of Jalisco. And we're really hoping that they will actually contribute to the strengthening of Recrea. And we are even happier with the opportunity of disseminating Recrea through this conference, through the publication of the book that Professor Fernando Reimers is giving us the opportunity to do so. And that is because we were really passionate about Recrea and all of the work that you have been doing in Jalisco. So it's really an honor to be able to collaborate with that. And I would just like to quickly address the question of Fidan about the problem of brain drain. Although Recrea and the system of education does not specifically address the issue of brain drain, it does have it's strongly rooted in the bonds between students and their communities and how they can learn by immersing themselves in their communities and in collaboration and tackling their challenges, their specific challenges. So I do believe that even though it's not specifically addressed, the dimension of enhancing citizenship and creating those bonds with the community will increase belonging and will make those Jaliscienses, the citizen Recreas, more and more able and eager to collaborate with their own state development.
Any other comments from the panel?
Yes, I would like to answer also Mercedes' question and comment. Thank you very much for your comment. Effectively, our main findings was that inclusion, it's a big challenge, but the power that Jalisco itself has, it's not that much because all of the resources come from the federal state of Mexico, where we see the problem that you are mentioning in special education. It's for this reason that our recommendations aims to look for a way to build capacity within the system, although we do not have enough resources to have a specialized professional and support in all of the schools of the system. This is why we think that these learning communities are the key, because many authors in inclusion have found that there's capacity built. Teachers have capacity. They are doing an amazing job in classroom. With the pandemic, we saw all the work that all school communities did to support each student where they are. So we think that by sharing and giving a space to those discussions, we can leverage the capacity that already exists and help support to attend all students. We are talking about special needs, but we know that it's a much bigger problem and challenge. So here is a first step. It's not enough. And also we talk about that it's not some courses or workshop. We have to include this inclusive perspective in all of the courses. If we're talking about mathematics, well, the teachers have to prepare in didactics with an inclusive perspective, and so on. So here are two challenges that we think that in short term or medium term can be addressed and give a Jalisco way to advance the system in inclusion.
Any final questions on this panel? There is one more thing I'd like to do before we conclude the morning, but if there is anything else this panel would like to say, Cuauhtémoc, Canan?
Yeah, I just want to, thank you, Señor Secretario Juan Carlos Flores Miramontes, for all your feedback and for all the comments and all the work that you have allowed us to do with the state of Jalisco in the last couple of months. Also, a special thanks to the Doctora Yolanda and Doctora Claudia for all the effort. It's truly an honor for all of us to have worked with them in the last couple of months. And we're so lucky that we got, and that the team in general got to know all of you, not just as educators, but also personally as amazing human beings. So yeah, just wanted to say thank you. And yeah, we look forward to continue working with you.
Canan, any final words?
Yes, thank you, Professor Reimers, for this brilliant opportunity. It has been an honor and pleasure working on Jalisco, Mexico. Secretary, it has really been an honor to work with your entire team. The kind of support that they provided us, our paper would not have been possible without all the data that they gave us and all the support and constant feedback we got from them. So we are very grateful. We look forward to continuing this collaboration and converting all our recommendations to further strengthen RECREA, which is already pretty good. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much. So what I'd like to do now before we conclude is bring all the discussants that we had this morning to the stage. And I'm going to ask them to provide a brief answer to a simple question. What we have done this morning, in fact, what we have done last semester, is to exemplify the kind of collaboration between universities and education systems that UNESCO report on the futures of education is calling for. One of the ways in which this report is different to the two previous reports is the two previous reports on UNESCO's on the futures of education did not talk about universities. And this report addresses universities in every chapter and proposes that universities need to integrate themselves with education systems in collaborations of various kinds. And so you have experience being participants in this kind of collaboration. And so what I'd like to do now is to invite not the panelists, but the discussants of these papers to share a brief reflection on that idea which you have experienced. And maybe we will begin, why don't we begin with you, Isaac? Just a minute each.
Fernanda, thank you very much. In fact, I was listening and I was thinking that I'm going to write a letter to my colleagues who run the program for educational leadership master program at my institute, and recommend them to do similar thing, because indeed, I guess that the potential of young researchers who are in master programs in good universities and good research universities is enormous, especially, let's be frank, compare with a bit outdated capacity in local teacher training units, curriculum development groups, etc., etc. So I think that universities have unique advantage. They have young people who can, who don't trust their traditions and who can question the state of affairs. So let's include it into the next edition of UNESCO report. Thank you.
Delighted to hear you say that. There are 28,000 universities in the world. Imagine if all of them did what you're planning to do. Imagine if only a fraction of them did what you were planning to do in building partnerships, collaborations with school systems, what this could do to strengthen the capacity, the collective capacity to address the challenges that we face. Let me ask Faryal to make a brief comment on this question. I'd love to hear from all of the presenters. So maybe if you could each take about a minute, that would be great. Faryal. Faryal, you're on mute.
Yes. Could you repeat the question one more time? I heard.
As someone who has been observing, in this case, you are not a client, but you are observing the collaboration of these students with a client. What are your reflections on that process? What are your reflections on that process? If you want, take a moment to think about it as we hear from others, and I'll come back to you. Sofia Leticia, over to you. Sofia Leticia, you're on mute.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's time to break the distance between the system of public education, basic education, and upper secondary education with universities. In Nuevo León, we have the Council of Nuevo León, and that the members of that council are part of different universities. And the president of the council worked with me together, and she is the vice president of the Tecnológico de Monterrey. So we have this partnership working together, and my main point is that if the doctoral student or master's student need to do research, they can do it from the challenge that we are facing in public education, in the public education system. So I couldn't agree more, and this is a very good example on how we can do it and as a win-win process.
Thank you so much, Sofia Leticia. Sergio Cárdenas. Sergio, you're on mute. Sergio? We cannot hear you. We're going to give you a minute and we'll come back to you. Juan Carlos.
Well, I also agree, Mr. Fernando, Professor Reimers. For Recrea here in Jalisco, the collaboration with universities is a key issue. Every time that we make an important decision, we have to bring all together, not only the universities, also the normales. Also, we work with a lot of stakeholders here in Jalisco that are very interested in education. I think parents are also very important for us. We also work with organizations that are they want to have another type of competition here in Jalisco or enterprises. So this experience for us has been great. In Jalisco, we have 3 years working with Recrea. This administration has another 3 years more, but we are planning to do this program for 2040. So I think when we left, we're going to be here just for a few years more, but the entire educational system stays, the professors, the parents, like I said. So we're going to keep working together, and all the framework that you gave us, we really appreciate it.
Thank you, Juan Carlos. Patricia.
Yes, Professor Reimer, I will just be very concrete. You have said, and I've read the report, and the report of UNESCO of the Futures is a report that embraces a social contract message. And it does not has one reader. I mean, we should all try to read the report. So if universities embrace, and I think it's a call for action for them, embrace the message, and at the same time, they go back and synthesize and digest the message of the report, it's going to be very easier, or much more easier than everyone can read the report and can understand the final message of that. So I think that for me, that's the importance of universities right now in this moment.
Thank you so much, Patricia. Jordan.
Thank you, Fernando. I have two comments. I think the first, this conference and the engagement of your students with the various clients is actually a reflection of that social contract in practice. It doesn't, it actually goes beyond just talking about what that social contract is by the involvement and engagement of students. The second point, I think, why the involvement of the students and this conference itself is important. Somebody in one of the questions spoke about evidence-based policymaking and how students, universities can contribute to that. And I think that's quite important. But I would go one step further. I think evidence-based policymaking tends to get addressed from a very technocratic point of view. It's about studies that get, recommendations in a narrow context. But the involvement of students who come from a range of different contexts across the globe gives us a better contextual nuance to how we interpret that evidence and then link it to actual practice. And I think the engagement of your students with these clients gives that, I want to say added flavor, but added value. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jordan. Faryal.
Yes, I really believe universities are hubs for innovation, new thinking, and research. And so building on what Jordan has also just said, university can help build that link between new ideas and innovative practices and what actually happens in schools. And I quickly want to mention, we had this, when I was working in Doha with Qatar University, we had a program, Al Bayrak, for learners. And high school kids used to come to do research at the university. And this was just a 2-month program. But this opened up STEM education for so many young learners. And they were, it gave young learners firsthand experience of what it was like to be in a university setting, work with professors, do research, and it opened up avenues for future career progression, for young high school students. So I think these kind of universities can be instrumental in building bridges for young learners who are at the cusp of their new lives, and it can really shape their lives by opening up opportunities and for research and new ideas. So yes.
Thank you so much, Faryal. Thank you. Sergio Paez.
Thank you, Fernando. Yes, absolutely. I think the collaboration between universities and districts is a natural connection that needs to exist. Not only they produce teachers, they do the training, they help policymakers. I think that collaboration, and as you know, in Massachusetts, we have a lot of collaborations with universities, license programs, modifications in the license programs to have the teachers that we need to be able to change education in the ground here. So I think this opportunity with UNESCO is giving us the chance to say, okay, let's renew the conversation. Let's talk about what kind of teachers are we producing, what type of leaders are we producing to be able to make the modifications we need to change in public education or in private education. But I think that what we produce in regards to teacher quality, that has to be connected with the data that we produce. How effective are our teachers? How effective are our policymakers to be able to make changes in the ground? So I think that this is an opportunity to renew conversations in Rhode Island, in Massachusetts, in the country, or in any country that is going to be involved in this renewal of changes in education. It's badly needed, and hopefully with this we can renew these conversations across the country with universities that are helping us make the difference in our schools.
Thank you, Sergio. Sergio Cárdenas.
Yes, I hope it works out. I think there are three important aspects. The first is that collaboration from universities is an important message that public education is a responsibility of everyone. I mean, you should not ignore the role you have in addressing public problems. The second is about the evidence, whether we like it or not. These are very complex problems, and you need the best relevant research to provide some solutions to the problems we are observing. And the final, and I think it's really, really important, is precisely what you're doing now, is that universities have the opportunity to engage and teach students how to collaborate with others and how to be aware of the social problems we have. So I think there is a formative issue that universities must acknowledge and work on it.
Well, thank you very much. At this point, we're going to conclude the day. I thank all of you who participated this morning, and I invite you tomorrow to the other half of this conference from 9 a.m. to 12:30. And I also invite you to a meeting next Monday, at which Stefania Giannini, the Director of Education for UNESCO, and several members of the International Commission, Vaira Vike Freiberga, former president of Latvia and a member of the Commission, Senator Cristóbal Buarque from Brazil, former Minister of Education, Elisa Guerra, an outstanding teacher from Mexico, and other Commission members will participate in a conversation discussing the report on the futures of education as we celebrate International Education Day, which, as you all know, is next Monday, January 24th. Thank you all very much for your contributions this morning. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Bye-bye.